The parade is planned. It's on Thursday, and the Knicks are making their rounds. OG Anunoby may still be on another planet. At least he looked like that on Good Morning America yesterday. This is what you do when you win a title. You celebrate, and everybody celebrates right along with you, especially if they're fans of the winning team. Here to talk about what the Knicks did from Sirius XM NBA Radio. Follow him on X at @BGeltzNBA. Brian Geltzeiler joins us now here on Westwood One Sports. Good morning, Geltz. How are you?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
Fantastic, man. I want to start there with the Knicks. For the fans of the Knicks, it's all about the afterglow still. You're not even thinking about the offseason. You're thinking about how early do I have to get downtown for the parade? What's it going to be like? This is amazing. I'm going to tell my kids about this, all the stories. For the rest of the NBA, it's about how do we do next year what the Knicks did this year. So I want to start with, what do the Knicks have to do to try and keep this core together? How much turmoil or movement might they face this offseason?
Well, listen, first of all, they did this year up against the second apron. And Mitchell Robinson's going to be a free agent, and the Knicks really are determined to keep him. They're going to have to go well into the second apron to keep him, and I think they're prepared to do that. I don't think this is going to be a situation like 2011 where the Dallas Mavericks won the NBA championship and Mark Cuban decided that we need to be nimble financially and kind of broke up some of the core of the team. The Knicks are not going to worry about being nimble financially. The Knicks will essentially do what we saw the Celtics do after winning in 2024, which was the fact that they kept that Porzingis, Horford, Holiday core together and paid a big luxury tax bill with the thought of let's try to see if we can have a 2 to 3 year window. The Knicks will attempt to do that. If it starts to crumble and comes apart a little bit, they'll get themselves out of the second apron, because we've seen that they have very, very shrewd management that can manage things financially very well, which they've done in the past. But now is a time where the Knicks are going to take advantage of the fact that Jim Dolan has always been willing to spend more than the next guy. And now this is what it's going to be. But I will say this about the Knicks. They're not going to be able to retain Landry Shamet, and they're going to need to replace him. I know Knicks fans love Mohamed Diawara. Maybe he's a guy they can keep, and he plays for them. Maybe he doesn't. Who knows? Their first-round draft pick is going to be really important this year. They have to be careful not to take a developmental project, but to take an older player who can come in and be a rotation guy immediately, because they're going to have to pay him a rookie scale deal, and it's going to cost them a lot of money when they're in the second apron and have to pay luxury tax on top of it. So the draft pick here for the Knicks, and a team that just won an NBA championship, actually looms pretty important in terms of what their chances are to repeat. We just saw a San Antonio team make an NBA final with some young guys. There's young guys that can help you on this level, and that cost-controlled talent when you're building trying to build some kind of dynasty can be really, really vital. And I think it's something to keep an eye on what the Knicks do in next Tuesday's draft.
Before I get to the rest of the league, and in particular the Antetokounmpo sweepstakes that we might see over the next week or so, let me pivot back to the team that just lost. You mentioned the Spurs. Good young team, solid core. Wemby's not going anywhere, and I think we'll grow up a lot both physically and mentally and emotionally this summer. What do they need to do, in your opinion, other than just go through this experience? I mean, what do they need to do to their roster to reconfigure, if anything, going into next year as the favorites?
They need a big athlete that they can play both next to Wemby and for Wemby. When you look at what happened to the Spurs, part of what beat them against the Knicks was the lack of versatility in their rotation. It was Victor Wembanyama and a group of perimeter players. And you saw how devastating in the last two series the Luke Cornett minutes were. They were bad. And although they're paying Cornett, they have him under contract for 3 more years at $30 million. The reality is for them, as a backup center in the regular season, he's fine. You get in the playoffs, you want to be able to match up small with somebody and have a small ball type of 5. The closest guy they have to that's Carter Bryant, and that ain't him. And so that, to me, is the one spot they're going to have to go do something. I know there's a lot of talk about moving De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox had a poor final. He did not have a wonderful playoff, and I do have my concerns about Fox and him not doing what he was brought there to do, which is essentially be a guy that enhances Victor Wembanyama and gets him the ball more. Fox did not do that enough, and that's definitely going to have to change. With that said, he did play the last two series with a bad ankle. That in the regular season, he would not have been playing. So I think for the Spurs, right now, Fox's value is not at a high with a 4-year, $240 million extension kick in. I would not think they're going to do anything to move him, but I do think you see something from them where they find somebody at a reasonable price that can come in, play small ball 5, and be more of a traditional 4 next to Victor Wembanyama, because I think that was something that was uncovered that they desperately needed.
Brian Geltzeiler of Sirius XM NBA Radio with us here on Westwood One Sports. Are there targets out there for that role for them, Geltz?
Yeah, listen, there's always targets out there, and the Spurs are loaded with draft picks. So, and again, not the easiest player type to find in the way that the NBA works right now, because again, the traditional power forward has been somewhat phased out. But yeah, they'll be able to find somebody that can be versatile enough to be that type of 6'8", 6'9" guy that can be bouncy enough to play some 5 and also supports Wemby and kind of a dunker spot type of situation. They were very hesitant to play 2 bigs in this Knicks series. Part of the reason was because of the bigs that they had. So I think you're going to go see, listen, I'll give you a good example. A Nick Claxton type with the Nets is not a bad guy for them at a reasonable $20 million deal, and he's a guy that's available. So if that's a guy they could go get, he would fit that role well, because Wemby likes to play on the perimeter offensively. You can bury him in the dunker spot, and then when you want to take Wemby out and play smaller and more nimble and faster, he'll do a decent job at the 5. So that's just an example, but it's that type of player that you're looking for to be able to slot in that spot.
All right, let me pivot back to the Knicks, because it's copycat season in both the NBA, the NHL. Everybody tries to copy what the champs just did well so that they can make their own run the following year. What is replicable about what the Knicks did this year that other teams that may feel like they're close can go out and do this offseason to put themselves in that position a year from now?
What the Knicks did is not as untraditional as I think it's been made out to be in the media. You still have to draft and develop guys. And what I mean by that is this. The Knicks drafted and developed R.J. Barrett and Manuel quickly, and that translated into OG Anunoby. And that was a vital player for them. The Knicks made some bets. They made a bet on Anunoby's contract. They made a bet on Mikal Bridges and the 5 first-round draft pick deal, which right now, it had an opportunity cost to it. That was Giannis. But what's the deal with that opportunity cost? You don't care now because you won an NBA title. So it's still about some of the same things. But I think it's also important to note that the Knicks that's part of the Knicks model in building this is not replicable. And I mean that in this respect. Free agency is not what it used to be in this particular CBA. And part of why the Knicks did as well as they did is, listen, the Karl Towns trade was 2 guys they signed as free agents, Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo, that went out for him. So that's going to be harder to replicate. I mean, it's easy to say, hey, go sign a guy like Jalen Brunson. Well, who's going to be able to do that at the number they signed him? I mean, it's so some of what they were able to do and cash in on was before the rules changed. So it's still about draft and develop. To me, the copycat aspect of this is what the Spurs did. And that's even going to be hard because the Spurs tanked their way into this. And now with the new lottery rules, it's going to be much harder to tank your way into things. It's almost impossible. So some of this is going to be, hey, how do we do it, almost build a team without necessarily having, multiple superstars? Now, hey, listen, Jalen Brunson has emerged as a superstar and quite an unlikely one because he was a second-round pick. Karl Towns, you want to say he's a superstar? Listen, he's a borderline All-NBA guy and certainly defensively proved himself to be a really good defensive big in these playoffs. I don't know that anybody could have guarded Victor Wembanyama better. But again, this was an ensemble approach for the Knicks. And if you look back historically, when have we seen ensemble approaches succeed? Not all that much. Listen, the time before this was the 2014 Spurs. Even the 2011 Mavs was Dirk and an ensemble approach. Before that, you go back to the 2004 Pistons. So I think what this does is liven up the ability to say, hey, maybe we can win without the traditional top 2, top 3 pick superstar to build around. So that's what's going to be interesting is how teams want to do that. But I do think you will see teams in terms of being maybe more reticent to trade guys that they drafted and developed to try to see if they can get guys that they feel fit their model better. The other thing is this, relationships mattered also. The CAA relationship with Leon Rose helped the Knicks with Anunoby. Obviously, relationships helped with Jalen Brunson. It certainly helped them when they wanted to bring in Karl Towns because Worldwide West had a relationship with him from the time Towns was 15 years old. And then the Bridges relationship and the Hart relationship with Jalen Brunson coming from Villanova. So that type of connection thing you may see other teams try to replicate.
Brian Geltzeiler of Sirius XM NBA Radio with us here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Costos today here on You Better You Bet. Let's pivot now to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Rumblings that it may be down to Boston and Miami, and it's up to Giannis to decide where he wants to go. There's always the question of, is there somebody else involved lurking in the shadows? How do you expect this to play out over the next week or so, Brian?
The Miami situation is interesting because I don't know that Milwaukee wants their package, and that's where Giannis wants to go. And I don't think Milwaukee, with the way the relationship is ending here with Giannis, are going to be constrained by his desires. Now, listen, Giannis can try to bluff out of it and say, well, this is the last year of my contract. If you trade for me, I won't sign an extension. But the question I would ask you, is Giannis going to do that with the Boston Celtics? I don't think so. I think he'd be silly to do that. I think to get to partner with Jason Tatum, it would be one of the great spots he could be in his career. The team I would tell you to keep an eye on that is lurking is going to be the Houston Rockets. Keep a close eye on them. They have a ton of draft capital. You got the feeling after what happened last summer in Eurobasket and then the year that he had, that Alperen Sengun is kind of peaked for what he is, and the contract is a competitive contract, and I think he's got a lot of value. So to put Sengun and 3 first-round picks in a deal, or 3 or 4 picks in a couple of swaps, which Houston has to spare, I think Houston could kind of come in at the last minute underneath everybody and steal them. And again, if I'm Giannis, I feel the same way. Like, what are you going to do? You're not going to want to play with Kevin Durant and Amen Thompson and Jabari Smith and that group. I think you come in there, you're not going to want to leave there to run to Miami as a free agent where the cupboard's going to be bare. The thing you have to remember about Giannis, he wants what he wants, and he wants to go where he wants to go. The whole reason he's leaving Milwaukee because he wants to win. So if teams in winning situations are able to bring him in and enhance what they have, the competitor in Giannis is not crazy enough to prioritize location over being in a winning program and have a chance to go win a championship. So I kind of think keep an eye on the Rockets here, and I think the Celtics are much more viable in this than I think anyone wants to let on. Just because here's the thing for Milwaukee, they'll get some Celtics picks, but they know that they can flip Jaylen Brown in a Giannis deal and get a whole lot of what they want out on the open market. And it may be a situation like what Portland did with Lillard, where they were able to get third teams involved and collect assets from two sides. You may see a situation that happens that way, and I think that would be very interesting. Like, listen, they had Phoenix involved in that deal. They were able to bring in Ayton. So, they couldn't get exactly what they wanted from one team in a deal, pulled an extra team in with other really good players, and then next thing you knew, they had the type of package they wanted. You may see John Horst in Milwaukee pull something like that off, and I would think it'd be likely with a Giannis deal, it's going to be a 3-team deal at a minimum.
Fascinating stuff, especially as it relates to the Celtics and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and breaking up that tandem as well. One final thing for you, Brian, before I let you run. The Darryn Peterson thing is, I don't know, it continues to rub me the wrong way, the fact that he won't meet or work out with anybody other than the Wizards. Is this contrived by him and his people to try and scare Utah off so that he slides past the Jazz? Does he legitimately think he's going 1 overall ahead of DeBonsa, or is this just more Darryn Peterson being Darryn Peterson?
This is very similar to Ace Bailey last year. I mean, I don't know that Darryn Peterson being Darryn Peterson is fair. Darryn Peterson had, for all of the negative attention that went on him last year at Kansas, still averaged 20 points a game. And I know, leaving games wasn't the best look and maybe had the wrong agent message in his ear, and that's why I compare it to Ace Bailey last year, who did not want to work out for the Jazz, got drafted by them, and then early on was not happy about going there, and then fired his agent and had a good year. It's so I think there's some of that. Danny Ainge won't be scared off by that, but I don't know that Utah wants Darryn Peterson. Darryn Peterson either wants to be the number 1 overall pick or he wants to go to the Bulls. That's what this is about. He doesn't want to go to the Jazz. He doesn't want to go to Memphis. He wants to go somewhere where he's in a larger market and can be marketed or be the number 1 pick. And even in Washington, it's a good market. These are the types of markets Darryn Peterson wants to go to. The question is other teams going to kind of roll over for that? Maybe, maybe not. Listen, if I'm a Utah or Memphis and I have a guy that I'm going to have to sell on my program versus guys like Cam Boozer or Caleb Wilson that I won't have to sell on my program, they're just going to come in and contribute immediately. Why do I want to deal with the headache? And that's the part with Peterson here. Peterson and his camp understand this. Chicago's not passing at him at 4. And so if he can slide by 2 or 3, I think he'd be happy to land in that location. And I think that's what he's trying to engineer. He wants to be 1. He wants to be 4. And listen, I think if Chicago really wants him, both Utah and Memphis, that's Danny Ainge and Zach Kleiman, 2 guys with real good track records as GMs. And I say Danny Ainge, his son Austin, is there running the show as well, but we know better. Danny's got plenty of input. Those guys can extract something out of Chicago, i.e. the 15 pick, and get an extra first-round pick and a really good draft for a guy they probably would have passed on anyway. That may be in play here as well. Peterson is kind of, telegraphing where he wants to be and what he wants to do. And if somehow Utah or Memphis has the ability to use that against the Bulls to extract an extra asset, we'll see what happens. Here's the thing. I don't know that Memphis will be able to do it for the 1 spot. I think at that point Chicago sits on their hands. Danny Ainge in Utah took Bailey last year. Saying he's going to take Peterson, even if it's a bluff, won't play as a bluff to the Chicago Bulls. And that's what's going to be interesting here. So, listen, I understand what Peterson's trying to do, and I think he's going to be a fantastic NBA player, could end up being the best player out of this draft. But right now, Darryn Peterson has shown you he's going to prioritize his own future and not really care about negative attention in the media, and that's carrying over into how he's handling the draft process.
Actually, one more final quick one for you, Geltz, before I let you run, if you can get it in 60 seconds. How quickly can they turn it around in Chicago now with Tiago Splitter as the head coach, if that were to work out with Peterson landing there?
Sometimes I love Tiago Splitter. It's a home run hire. It's a fantastic hire. With all that said, in the NBA, for the most part, sometimes it ain't about the X's and the O's. It's about the Jimmys and the Joes. And they don't have enough players right now. Listen, they're going to bring in a number 4 player. It's probably going to be either Wilson or Peterson, I would think. With all the buzz on Boozer, I think he goes in the top 3. And you have Giddey, you have Bizelis, who I'm really high on, and you got nothing else. And for them, they really have to roll up their sleeves and do some player development stuff. And make no mistake about it, that's why Splitter is there. Splitter had a big role in Denny Avdija being a borderline All-NBA guy this year. Splitter he thinks outside the box. He has guys play a little more positionless, which favors Bizelis and Giddey and whoever they get in the draft. I'm not big on this Noah Senge guy they took last year, but they'll try to make a horse race of it with him. Splitter is a player development guy. The Bulls are going to have a miserable year this year. There's no doubt. However, they're going to be committed to Tiago Splitter, and they're going to stay with him for a while. And he's going to have a chance to build this thing in his own image. And I think we get out of a situation where this year and maybe next year, I think the Bulls are going to be bad this year. I think they'll make a jump next year because I really like Bryson Graham. I think he's going to do a very good job. I like what I'm seeing already out of him. And by the 3rd year Splitter's there, I think they could be a playoff team. I think that's how quickly this thing could rise. The Bulls, it's been a long time since they've had the right people kind of doing what they need to do to take them. Probably not since Jerry Krause have they had the right kind of management and the right kind of coaching. I love Billy Donovan, but he was kind of miscast in the role that he had there with the rest of that organization. This organization, I think, is now finally, after bottoming out, starting to trend up.
Brian, great stuff as always, man. I could talk to you for another half hour. This offseason is going to be fascinating, especially as it ramps up over the next week. Appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, man.
You too. Take care, Chris. Thank you, buddy.